Not only is it a priority to have net zero operations, we've done it. Prior to even forming our organization or focus on sustainability as an enterprise, we did commit to net zero in 2020 and 2021. So we were able to fulfill that. And how we did that was back to basics.
Welcome to Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. Our mission is to show the many paths to net zero for an industry that is one of the hardest to decarbonize. So, every week we speak with airline, airport, travel, and technology executives to help separate the signal from the noise. Whether you're a frequent flyer, an airline executive, if you care about sustainability, or just love traveling, welcome aboard! This is a show by Simpliflying, who have been helping build trust in travel for over 15 years. This season of the podcast is brought to you by Cirium, which is empowering the global aviation industry to reach a more sustainable future with the most accurate aircraft emissions data. The show is also supported by Carbon Click, leaders in managing carbon offsetting programs for top global airlines. Without further ado, here is your host, Shashank Nigam, CEO of Simpliflying.
Boeing is one of the two largest aircraft manufacturers in the world. My conversation with Sheila was enlightening to learn what exactly Boeing is doing in terms of pushing aviation towards a greener future. Join me, and I'm sure you will learn as much as I did. It's a pleasure to be speaking once again with Sheila Remes, who leads sustainability at Boeing. I had the pleasure of speaking with Sheila back at Farnborough in 2022. It was a fascinating conversation, but it was too short. So today we decided to get much deeper. Sheila, welcome back.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me back.
Now, let's dive right into the hot news of the moment. NASA has chosen Boeing to help develop an airplane of the future. I mean, this is coming after a long time where there will be a completely new development from Boeing together with NASA. Tell us a little about this development and how it fits into just overall plans.
Boeing has been working with NASA for a number of years on a number of different sustainability programs. And so it was really exciting to be able to be selected to be the leader, the integrator for this new technology demonstration program associated with sustainable flight. So all of the technologies that will get demonstrated and tested as part of the program will help inform the future designs for our future programs and could lead to some groundbreaking efficiencies that could, provide positive sustainability and economic implications. So we're excited to do this in partnership with NASA, and the industry will all be coming along with us as well. So pretty exciting news.
Indeed, and the most unique factor about this is that new wing concept. Is this something Boeing has worked on previously? Are there models to show this dramatically reduces fuel burn or makes the plane fuel efficient?
Well, as I mentioned, we've been working with NASA for over a decade. And so we've been studying this, what we call transonic thrust-based wing concept, say that fast 3 times, as part of what we call the subsonic ultra green aircraft research. So SUGAR for short. And in 2008, NASA asked the industry and academia to explore and develop these different advanced concepts that could be satisfy the anticipated commercial air transportation need. And so that's really where that design concept has come out of. And so that new design was what we put forward, and we'll continue to work with NASA on what that might turn out to be.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for sharing a bit of background here. I love the acronym SUGAR. That's one type of sugar the world needs more of, not less of.
Exactly.
Now, I want to ask you a question that is the theme of late of a lot of guests I've been speaking with, that aviation industry is focused on growth. And we've just, come back very strongly post-COVID as well, and that's very encouraging. But at the same time, more growth means more emissions. How do you see Boeing and the industry reconciling this notion of growth and sustainability in your role?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and definitely relevant and one that we've been focused on for, the last 20 years because we knew that we needed to address something in order to continue to have air travel be able to grow. So over the last 50 years, as you know, it's air travel has become an integral part of society, and it really provides the unsung societal benefits, which we're connecting humanity in so many different ways. So today, about 250 million people do not live where they grew up. So visiting friends and family, academic, transportation back and forth from schools, that's all a big part of it. Air travel enables soft diplomacy with people and cultures connecting. So another critical part of keeping our world safe and secure. And humanitarian relief, that one certainly over the last 3 years, the thing that continued to keep moving was freighters, air freight to get humanitarian aid to the number of either natural disasters or just COVID support. So, with 4.5 billion people potentially growing to 10 billion by 2050 in terms of annual travel, and 7 trillion in goods exchanged with forecasts up to 9 trillion by 2050, all of this points to the industry really needing to grow. And without the necessary actions, so will emissions. So what are we going to do? We're not going to go backwards. We're going to need to go forward. And that's where sustainable fuels come in. That's where transition of different energies. And when I talk about going backwards, I think about, traveling from, say, New York to San Francisco. You can travel in a car. It'll take you 5 days. It'll take you 120, gallons of fuel. And then you can travel on a 787 with, 5 hours and 33 gallons per passenger. So there's a lot of goodness that is enabled with air transportation movement. And so right now we're in that decade of action. We need to take those actions. We need to scale sustainable fuels. We need to explore alternative energies, and we need to work cross-sectorally to really make sure that that can happen.
I'm fully aligned with you on this because I agree. Travel makes the world a smaller and a better place. This is something that's needed for society to function well. Yet, we have to take care of the environment and think about the future and not just growth at any cost. It can be the mantra. And on that point, I remember when we last spoke at Farnborough last year, Boeing had released a model on how airlines could get to net zero of a most effective route. I believe it was called Cascade. How has the last year been for Cascade, and what's the result this model is showing?
Yeah, no, that was a really exciting opportunity for us to create something for the industry. And really it was built, the tool itself was built off of the foundation or fundamentals that the Waypoint 2050 report had produced. And so that was an industry report kind of showing the scenarios of what was going to be needed to get to net zero by 2050. But this is a dynamic model that actually cascades the various improvements associated with the various technologies and options that the industry has to improve. And I think what's different and probably even more informative is that it quantifies the 4 different levers that we talk about. So fleet renewal, operational efficiency, renewable energy, as well as new aircraft advanced technology. But it also allows the stakeholders and those that we engaged with to define their assumptions of the future and see the implications of those choices. And one of the elements that's really unique for this particular model is around the carbon intensity. So understanding the life cycle benefits of any energy source. So whether it be electricity, hydrogen, and SAF. So all of them have a life cycle. And so you can run some assumptions associated, is the grid green? Where are you for your country? Where are you for your airline? And really start to see timing as well as what needs to be put in place so that we don't go backwards as we're trying to go forward.
Right. And tell me, how is this being used now? Is Boeing taking this to your airline clients, or is this being given to airlines to help with their net zero 2050 planning? How is this being deployed?
Right now, we're still kind of in the prototype stage, and we're sharing it with our subject matter experts, the limited number that have access to the tool, and we're sharing it with our customers, policymakers, industry partners, and really helping inform the decisions that we collectively need to make. And so eventually we're trying to figure out how to soft launch this more broadly so that more people can utilize it and facilitate these discussions with regulators and policymakers, because it's all of the stakeholders that are in this space that need to come to a common understanding and find a way forward.
Right, right. This is very encouraging. I mean, there's a data model, it's quantitative. We definitely need more of those in the world. And this is definitely, I'm sure, going to have a huge impact in the future. Though the one thing that is having an impact today is the Boeing ecoDemonstrator, which has been around. It actually had its 10th anniversary last year. How does this fit into the bigger sustainability picture at Boeing? And what has been some of the biggest lessons from the ecoDemonstrator?
Yeah, no, exciting that we had our decade-long anniversary. So it was launched back in 2012 with a goal of innovation leads to sustainable solutions. And so that innovation and sustainability, I mean it as a complete picture of what sustainability is. So our goals were around enhanced safety, improving efficiency, minimizing our environmental footprint. So all of those were the different technologies that were put on the airplane over the last 10 years. So it took the benefit of having a flying test bed is that we can take those technologies out of the labs and really test them in real world operations. So things are a little different when you're flying at altitude or when you're actually having to operate and turn the aircraft. So over the 10 years of the program, there have been about 230 different technologies that have been tested, and about a third of them have actually validated and made their way back into our products and services. And so all of those technologies are reducing fuel, emissions, noise, enhancing the safety, and really, looking at more sustainable materials as well. So not just the fuel use itself, but also what we use to make the products. So kind of some examples of what are on the airplanes today that have gone through the ecoDemonstrator that people would recognize is first is the advanced technology winglets that are on the MAX. So that was a big add or improvement on fuel burn. We also have done a lot of work with our Boeing Global Services teams on some of their technologies. So iPad apps that allow pilots to have real-time weather as well as other information that helps improve their fuel efficiency and reduce emissions while they're flying. Custom flight path approaches that allow us to reduce community noise or allow our customers when they're flying to reduce community noise. And then flight deck touchscreen displays is another example. It's a touchscreen and camera display that's integrated on the 777X that allows the pilots to see more around the ground obstacles as they're moving around the airport. So that enhances the safety of that operation. So those are just a few examples of things that have actually manifested themselves into our products.
This is very, very fascinating, and thanks for sharing some of these details. I remember there was a NASA SAF emissions testing done on the ecoDemonstrator as well, isn't it, recently?
It was, yeah, that was part of the 2021 and 2022 ecoDemonstrator. So we had done some data analysis on SAF emissions to really understand the particulates, community impact, and what was happening. And so we did those starting in 2021. We did more in 2022 in that ecoDemonstrator test. And so we tested on the ground the comparative of the different SAF blends against a 100% SAF and just tried to understand what are the benefits that we're seeing coming out of the SAF running engines.
That's interesting. Has the ecoDemonstrator then flown with 100% SAF on at least one of the engines before?
The ecoDemonstrator actually flew with 100% SAF back in 2018. And that was in conjunction with a partnership with Federal Express, FedEx Express. And so that was on a 777 freighter at that point in time. So we did that experiment. And then since that time, we've done a number of collaborations across customers, really trying to learn more about 100% SAF, as well as just learn more about how do you integrate SAF into an operation, into an airport, working with regulators, government. So it's a process for us to all learn. There's a lot to be learned, I guess, is in simple terms.
Right, and I think it tremendously helps the industry when Boeing is making such pioneering efforts. One of these, of course, with SAF, still sticking to SAF, is the upcoming Virgin Atlantic flight, which will be held on a Dreamliner, where Virgin Atlantic will be flying across the Atlantic on a 100% SAF powered flight, if I'm not wrong. Tell us a little bit more about this and how it came about and what role Boeing is playing in this flight.
Well, first of all, Virgin has been a partner on our SAF journey from the beginning. They were actually the first ones to do a SAF test on their 747s back in 2008. So it really helped. Yeah, so they built the pathway for us to get certified and able to use it. This first net zero transatlantic flight is really enabled by the support of the UK government's Department for Transportation. And so that was initiated by the government to really inspire and encourage industry to move forward with this. So it's a great partnership opportunity with the government. And as you mentioned, we'll be flying, or Virgin Atlantic will be flying it later in this year. A Boeing 787. It'll take off from London and fly over to JFK. And so that really pioneers a journey that thousands of people make every day for business, family, and leisure purposes. So it's a perfect route to have as a proving ground. We're actually providing technical support for the flight. It is a project that is led by a British consortium of Rolls-Royce, Imperial College of London, University of Sheffield, and the Rocky Mountain Institute and ICF are also part of this consortium. So it's really, a labor of a lot of people pulling together. And it's expected to be fueled by SAF made primarily by waste oils and fats, such as cooking oils. It'll use 100% SAF on the flight. And it will be a net zero flight because it will also have carbon removal through biochar credits, which will then effectively make the flight net zero. And biochar is a material that traps and stores carbon taken from the atmosphere. So really, all of those elements make it unique and a first-time opportunity for all of us.
That is very encouraging to hear. And in fact, we've been speaking with Virgin Atlantic to have them on the show, and hopefully soon they will be coming to speak about this flight itself. It's also encouraging to see how the non-CO2 impact is also being taken care of through the biochar, and the flight is truly net zero, and it's not just the CO2 emissions that are being taken care of. Again, when still sticking to SAF, when we last spoke, we spoke about the supply and the demand for SAF. The supply is too little, the demand is too high, and that results in cost of SAF being anywhere from 3 times to 5 times the normal jet fuel cost, depending on where you are in the world. Also, the supply is not very equally distributed. You have a lot of it in California, not as much of it in parts of Europe, for example. How do we deal with this? And is Boeing doing something in terms of SAF?
Yeah, no, it's it continues to still be a challenge, but one of the data points that I got last year is that from the 0.01% that we were at back in 2019, we had a 200% increase. So it's small, but it's improving. So that's good news. But really, no matter what scenario you assume for future of technology or energy sources, we will need massive supplies of SAF to meet that net zero commitment. So being a drop-in replacement, that's why we're really focused on it, because you don't have to change airport infrastructure or airlines operations. And so we're really focused on catalyzing SAF through our subject matter experts, working with the fuel industry, working with the startup industry, also doing a lot of work in our investments in product compatibility. And we're also learning by using it ourselves. So we started that process back in 2021, where we purchased our own, or 2022, excuse me, where we purchased our own flight or SAF for our own use. We also are working really closely with governments globally on policy support to enable the finance to get attracted to this particular industry. So commitment to the 100% SAF capable airplanes by 2020 or by 2030. The NASA Langley research that you had mentioned, a Sky Energy partnership that we had launched, the sector champion for the First Movers Coalition. We're really trying to put as much voice and create coalitions and, different parties joining the effort, because it is going to take such a large number of people, policy, finance, as well as the innovation from the oil and gas industry and the startups that are out there.
Right. You seem to be a part of a lot of multilateral groups here. I'm curious, are you able to share a bit more about the First Movers Coalition and your work as part of that?
Yeah, the First Movers Coalition, a number of airlines as well as a number of industries signed up. And so for the aviation sector, we had signed up to be the sector champion, which effectively what that means is as they're working on those policies and figuring out how to set the stage for that improved carbon intensity and how do you get a better fuel as you go out there. So they're really trying to set a high bar out there. What we have contributed is we actually have committed a person to be seconded into that work. So we've committed to helping work on that with the coalition that's also a part of that group.
Very interesting. And is this person, I'm just digging a little deeper, is this person an engineer? Is this you from a policy level? Who is this person and what's the level of contribution here?
Actually, the person that we have seconded into the group previously was at IATA, working on the fuel users group. And so well known in the industry, Rob Boyd is that person. And, I think it's really exciting because he's had, probably at least a decade worth of experience in this. And so he lends a very credible and knowledgeable voice, as well as, can plug into the Boeing network and infrastructure to pull on getting any kind of support he needs to make sure that this continues to move forward.
Right. This is definitely encouraging. Still staying on the industry, let's look at some of the other players, what they're doing. Airbus, as you know, has made a big bet on hydrogen powered aircraft and has a goal on a narrow body powered by hydrogen combustion being in service by the middle of next decade. I'm curious why Boeing has decided not to go down a similar road and what are some of the alternatives that Boeing is considering?
Yeah, in many respects, I think we're actually doing very similar things. And I think what we actually see is the emphasis and the voice that Airbus has is in the hydrogen space, and ours is on SAF and so relative to what your question is about what else are we doing, we are working significantly in the electric and hydrogen space as well. We're really focused, our approach maybe is more focused on ensuring we understand what is technically possible and feasible with our testing, with our roadmaps, with the development work that we have going on, and then making sure it's economically feasible for ourselves and our customers as we move forward on development. So it's a pretty traditional or typical path on how you work on innovation. And so we are working in all aspects of both hydrogen and electric. So I'll touch on a few things that we've done in the hydrogen space. First of all, we're big advocates of green hydrogen. And the reason is it goes back to carbon intensity and the application for hydrocarbons. So we need green hydrogen to improve the SAF. So we think that that's probably the best use of green hydrogen, especially in the near term. And so by taking that and and having renewable carbon, you now have a drop-in fuel, often called e-fuels or synthetic fuel. But as an industry, we're also looking at hydrogen as an energy carrier, and we've done several prototypes with this integration with either liquid fuels, fuel cells, crewed and uncrewed aircraft, and we've done those over the last 15 years. And certainly our space and launch business that we have has given us a great experiential window into how to work with cryogenic storage systems and the challenges that it actually imposes on liquid hydrogen for aircraft. The linerless cryogenic tank that we built in 2021 with NASA, it was a composite. And so we did the testing for our space system. But what was really valuable for us and the industry as a whole to see is that those 16,000 gallons of liquid hydrogen are the equivalent energy density required to fly a regional jet, which is in Jet A terms would be 3,700 gallons. So it's just the size differential, and then that integration into an aircraft is what we have to work on as we go forward. So developing different flight concepts is really what we're focused on there, and trying to figure out what that might mean and how we might actually put all of the integration of that together. We also, in July this past year at Farnborough, we also announced a partnership with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. And there we're focused on jointly studying enabling sustainability technologies, which include hydrogen, electrification, and sustainable aviation fuels. And I think what's important about that, and what's important about what we're doing across the industry, is finding those partnerships where we can learn together, because it's certainly something that can't be done alone. And in order to get to speed, we're definitely going to have to leverage partnerships across the industry, and they're a great partnership. We talked also about our work with Whisk, and so that was a joint venture in the electrification space, and so that is something that we're continuing to work with them and support them in order to learn more about electrification as well.
That is a lot. That is a lot that's going on, beyond, of course, what's out there in the press and what meets the eye. Now, my frank question is, what's the one big ticket item that was the one big thing that Boeing is betting on that will get the industry to net zero? Is it really SAF +++, or is it something else?
It really is SAF +++, or SAF and, as we talk about it, because it's available now. It's drop-in. You don't have to change. You can take old aircraft and put that fuel in there. So you have a multiplier effect by being able to change your existing fleet. So it's really scaling, and so unusual. We need to continue to work on efficiency. It's just kind of what we do well as an industry and as Boeing, but really working closely to scale the energy, because we designed aircraft, 100 plus years ago, knowing what energy was going into it. Now we have to improve the airplane and change the energy source. So that's a different approach. We haven't had to worry about the energy before. And certainly the energy density of Jet A or kerosene is, like none other. So it is a powerful source of energy, especially for aviation.
Right. I hear you on the readiness of SAF, and that is just drop in. You don't need to modify infrastructure at the airport or aircraft for that matter, right? That definitely works. It's the only option today, like you said. You're absolutely right. And one of the things, of course, though, is if you just replace jet fuel with SAF, the non-CO2 emissions, the nitrogen oxide, the contrails, those still remain. How are you working to address this area from contrails to NO2 and other emissions, non-CO2 emissions?
Yeah. Well, one of the areas that we're working on for that is SAF and understanding it, because the particulates are also part of the contribution of creating contrails. The primary climate impact, though, as you pointed out, is the CO2. And so the NOx emissions at altitude and the persistent contrails that evolve into contrail cirrus clouds, they're formed from initial water vapor emissions and at the right atmospheric conditions. So really, there's a lot of science that is still being discovered and trying to be understood. So the impacts depend on how long they persist in the atmosphere. CO2 lasts for decades to centuries. Ozone produced by NOx lasts for days to weeks, and contrails persist for hours. And so efforts to try and identify where they're being created so that you can avoid them, that's one effort. And then also to mitigate the impact of these, you have to account for any kind of trade-offs. So if you're burning more fuel to avoid creating the contrails, that might be a counterintuitive, improvement. So lots of uncertainties still out there. There's a number of different coalitions that are being formed to really, again, this is a science effort that needs to have everybody's brain on this. And so we're working with NASA, with the German Aerospace Center, DLR, the FAA, US National Laboratories, universities, all of them working towards and moving forward the Contrail Impact Task Force, which is allowing some research to really understand what did we assume, what did we find, and how can we, improve our knowledge and what can we do about it. So I think there's a number of elements that will come together. And like I said, SAF, interestingly enough, is also something that creates fewer soot particles, which means it can reduce the contrails. So we're also trying to understand that as it applies to contrail reduction. So it's a lot out there to be done for sure.
A lot to unpack. I think this is getting deep. Now, I can't help but think when I speak to airline CEOs or CCOs or even COOs, the conversation is often, oh, you know what? SAF is 3 times more expensive than jet fuel. Reducing contrails might require me to fly at a different altitude, which results in, let's say, 2% more cost of jet fuel. I wonder, it's a very honest question, how do we convince an airline CEO, hey, you know what, increasing costs today for reduced emissions overall? It's a tough argument to win, isn't it?
It is going to be a tough argument. And I think a lot of airlines are signing up for that commitment, though. I'm seeing commitments to demand around SAF, commitments to investing in retrofit solutions that can impact their aircraft now. You can get 1 or 2%, investing in new procedures. So it's encouraging, and I think it is partially to ensure that the long-term benefits of aviation are allowed to exist by making improvements now and continuing to innovate. I mean, it's amazing what this industry has done in only 30 or 50 years, pick your time frame. They've been exponential improvements in efficiency. So I think we can do more, and I think they're committing to it.
Right. I think we're definitely heading in the right direction. I agree with you. But these are things I often think about from a commercial perspective. Looking at some of the exciting investments Boeing has made. One investment you've of course made is into Wisk, which is one of the most promising eVTOL companies. Do you think it's realistic we'll see Wisk flights by the end of the decade, especially given that they're pilotless?
Yeah, what I can tell you about our work with Wisk is this. We started a team back in 2010, and they were set out to explore the possibilities of this electric eVTOL world. In 2019, that team and the generations of aircraft became Wisk through that joint venture that Boeing and Kitty Hawk Corporation formed. So in addition to being an investor, we're also a strategic partner, providing that development, testing, and certification support that's going to be needed. And together we are shaping that future of mobility as part of Wisk's mission to make safe and everyday flight a reality for everyone. So there's a lot going on with that partnership, and it's exciting. I think it'll be new for the world. It's we're excited to be a partner with them.
Right. I'm looking forward to see what comes out of it, and I'm especially excited because it's going to be the pilotless eVTOL. So let's see how that rolls out. Boeing, of course, is the largest international exporter in the U.S. It's a huge manufacturer. So as a company, your operations are pretty large as well in itself. It's beyond just sending the planes all over the world. In terms of your own Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, how are you making manufacturing processes net zero? Is that a priority?
Not only is it a priority to have net zero operations, we've done it. So prior to even forming our organization or focus on sustainability as an enterprise, we did commit to net zero in 2020 and 2021. So we were able to fulfill that. And how we did that was really, back to basics. So first of all, reduce. So we have a number of conservation efforts that have been underway for years. We implemented the EPA's program that really focused on conservation. And that is something that we call Battle of the Buildings inside our company, to really focus on where are the areas that we can reduce and improve on either our equipment or our processes. And so just in last year, so we do this every single year. And last year we had over 230,000 different actions that people took to improve things. And it's as simple as turning off the lights, your HVAC systems, electronics, picking up FOD, foreign object debris, recycling everything from shipping containers to parts. So part of it is the transformation of a culture and a mindset, but the other part of it is actually it makes a difference. So conservation's one, and number two is purchasing renewable electricity. And so we've been doing that as of January of last year. More than 20% of our energy use was powered by renewable electricity or renewable energy. And so we procure enough of that in solar, wind, and hydropower to power our factories in Renton, Washington, Charleston, South Carolina, a large data center in Arizona, and we can meet almost all of the electricity needs for Boeing's Everett facility. So we're also purchasing additional multi-state agreements to purchase carbon neutral power for our sites in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So we're on a journey on improving our renewables. And then there's still, more to be done. And we do that with certified, global, verified offsets that have co-benefits. And so that kind of closes the gap, but it's really the last part as we continue down the journey of getting to net zero.
That's very interesting. I wasn't aware about the offsets part, by the way. That's news. Is that something Boeing does internally? Do you work with an external provider like Gold Standard or Vera?
Yes, it's definitely done through the Gold Standard or Vera. We look at it through the CORSIA lens, which is the offsetting, structure for aviation. And it's really the strictest structure that does require Vera and Gold Standard certified, verified offsets. So we do purchase those through that standard, and then we also make it a little bit more stringent. So we kind of put a little more stringency than what's in CORSIA, and it's been a great experience. One, to understand exactly how that marketplace works, and two, to be able to work on co-benefit projects that are global in nature, since our business is global in nature.
Right. And is there any do you skew towards offset projects that are in the Washington State area or North Carolina area, where a lot of your workers or factories are based, or you might be offsetting mangroves in Madagascar? Is there a differentiation?
We do work. There's less projects available in the U.S. and Europe just because the uptake is fairly high in some of those markets, and so most of ours are global, and they do have a social element as part of it, and so that's what I mean by co-benefits. So a couple of examples are a Colombian indigenous reservation, to avoid deforestation in that area. We did something with a forest carbon project in Winston Creek, which is in South Washington State. So it's a 5-generation family-owned company. And so that's in Washington. And then another example is an afforestation project in China. So there's a number of different projects across the world, but they do meet these co-benefits and the Verra or ACR gold standard.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing that because I don't think a lot of people are familiar or are in the know about these offsetting strategies as Boeing. Given how global Boeing's footprint is, you have planes flying all over the world. You must be familiar that recently in Europe, for example, there are moves to discourage short-haul travel where rail alternatives exist. Like France, I believe, has banned short-haul flying of flights for less than 2 hours, if I'm not wrong. Many of the routes are, of course, currently served by narrow bodies like the 737 family. Do you foresee any threats to your narrow body business due to these climate-related pressures from certain governments or jurisdictions?
Moves like this really infringe on a core value of the European Union, which is freedom of movement, as they restrict or limit the options that their citizens have to travel at their convenience. And so from an accessibility perspective, train travel is also not without its deficiencies. And so it becomes clear when you're considering that ban in France that it only impacts 3 routes, fulfilling a very specific precondition. The infrastructure required to make rail viable across Europe is not widely available, even in Europe, which has one of the world's best developed cross-country networks. So we're focusing all of our efforts to minimize and eventually neutralize aviation's climate impact. And so that's where our common goal to make a difference now aligns to ensure that this is a viable solution for the future. As I mentioned, the growth of the industry and the demand for air travel, we anticipate continuing to grow. And so it's our onus to be able to make an impact so that people can do that.
This is encouraging because you're right, especially for international cross-border travel. The train connectivity is not as good even in Europe or Japan as it might be domestically or certain regions of the countries as well. Now, the final question I'd love to ask is, we only have 27 years as an industry to reach the net zero target. Are you an optimist? What gives you the most hope about the future about the potential of our industry getting to net zero?
I am an optimist because I do believe, and I have seen the innovation that this industry is able to bring to the table. Like I said, we've improved from the start of jet age. We've reduced emissions by 70%. So we can do this. And there is incredibly smart people coming out of school. There's incredibly motivated people. So I know it's a possibility. It might not be exactly in the next 27 years, but I do think that we will make significant progress as an industry. So it's optimistic. I think I mentioned this at Farnborough that everybody's talking about it because, 5 years ago it was hot and cold. And now you can't go anywhere without the discussion. And the discussion is the start for progress, I think.
Yeah, I fully agree. This is something we spoke about at Farnborough, how much buzz and talk there was about sustainability, SAF, hydrogen, all of the new technologies. And I wouldn't be surprised if in future air shows, there are 2 sets of announcements. One is the new aircraft order, and the other is the amount of SAF ordered at this air show, which becomes a metric.
That would be great.
Exactly. That's definitely encouraging. Now, the final part of this interview is what I call the rapid fire round, where to close up, we get a bit more personal so that the listeners get to know you a bit more about what's behind the scene, behind the corporate, since we are doing this interview in your home office and not your corporate office. It's good to know that as well. So I'll start with something simple. For example, what's your favorite airline?
Ooh, that one's a hard one for me to answer, right? So let me give you a vague answer, which is anybody who flies Boeing. But really, I'm going to lean towards the two airlines that I've worked for, and then my hometown because it allows me to fly everywhere I need to go. So that's kind of where I'll stay kind of neutral.
Okay, so I'm guessing then that's Alaska and United.
And actually technically American too, because I worked for America West.
Oh, okay. All right. Back in the day. Well, it helps that I believe Alaska has recently eliminated all in-flight plastic as of this week. So,
Yeah.
That ties in.
Exactly.
And
they're a great partner.
Indeed, definitely a good airline to fly with. What about your favorite book?
Okay, I'm going to cheat again, but I love nonfiction and fiction, but I'm going to go with nonfiction. Anything that David McCullough writes, I love. So you learn something every time you read some of his books. Okay.
Is there a favorite of David's that you love to read?
I liked there's two of them, The Building of the Bridge, which is the Brooklyn Bridge, and The Path Between the Seas. Those are fun because they're engineering marvels that we take for granted today. So they're fascinating.
Very interesting. I'm gonna look it up. I've not read that one. What about your favorite city?
San Sebastian. It's a great intersection of three cultures and a great city with nice food. So I'll go with that one.
San Sebastian, where is that? Because I've not been there.
In Spain.
San Sebastian.
So it's in northern Spain, right next to France, close to Portugal, in Spain. So you get a little bit of everything.
Very nice, very interesting. What about your favorite movie?
That was another hard one. I'm going to go with Peter Sellers' Pink Panthers. I like a little bit of humor. It's a good thing.
Okay, fantastic. One of my favorite comedies as well. What is something that you want to learn?
I would like to learn how to be an artist, or be able to do something with, producing something from an artistic standpoint, whether it be writing or painting or, needlework. So I don't get a chance to do that.
Have you been doing any of these, or did you do any of these when you were a kid?
When I was a kid, I had done crochet with my grandma. I loved to write, and so that, but I've had to do more writing for work, which is a little different than creative writing. And I'm a really bad drawer, so I'm assuming that I could learn something in painting or be, very draw squares and call it really inspirational, I'm hoping.
Hey, Sheila, you can do modern art. It's up to interpretation, isn't it?
That's true, yeah. And it's marketing. Maybe I can market my art as being something really spectacular.
Exactly. Interestingly, just before COVID, I was on a sabbatical, and I rediscovered my love for pastel crayons.
Oh, that's great.
Which I had last picked up, I think, when I was maybe 10 years old, and then, you never do it after that, right?
Right.
And there was this Airbnb we checked in with my family, and the host had left a blank sketchbook and a box of pastel crayons, which I ran and grabbed and just, started doing it.
Crazy. That's great. I need to do that.
Exactly. I will send you the link of that Airbnb to check it out.
Okay, perfect.
Pastel crayons will be much closer. What is something that you do in your free time?
I like to do things outside. So I enjoy, kind of the Pacific Northwest and the outside that we're allowed to do. And then as most people will know, I read a lot. So I really enjoy reading. So that's a de-stressor for me.
Fantastic. That's I'm glad to know. I can relate to that. And finally, what's the best advice you have received?
How about get comfortable being uncomfortable? It really kind of opens your mind to how you navigate with uncertainty. And we live in a lot of uncertainty, and come out the other side of COVID okay. So I think it was good advice.
Indeed. Let's take that, I'll keep that close to my heart. I fully agree. Sheila, it's been a pleasure speaking once again. Thank you for going in depth and answering questions. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you would like to share or speak about?
I don't think so. You had a pretty thorough list of questions. So thank you for allowing me to spend this much time with you and go through a deep dive. So it's been great.
Fantastic. Once again, I really appreciate your time, and thanks for the insights. I'm excited about the work you are doing and what Boeing is doing in making flying better and greener for the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Sustainability in the Air, the world's first podcast dedicated to sustainable aviation. Awareness is the key to a green future, so please give us your support to help our sustainable aviation insights reach a wider audience. You can do this by sharing us with your network or leaving a review. For more information on how aircraft emissions data can help you reach your sustainability goals, visit Cirium from the link in the show notes. You can start a conversation with us at podcast@simpliflying.com. And for more content on sustainable aviation, please visit our website, simpliflying.com, and join the movement.